My name is Jacques. I'm going to do that video to show you how to create virtual PC using Hyper-V. Hyper-V is a hypervisor created by Microsoft. It is available in most of Microsoft Windows Pro, Windows Education, and Windows Enterprise. In order to create a virtual computer, you need to have a host computer because you create virtual PC from a host PC. Second, you need to have what they call a hypervisor. The hypervisor is the technology that manages the hardware that allows the virtual PC that you create to interact with the hardware of the host PC. I said first, you need to have a host PC, and second, you need to have a hypervisor. The hypervisor is the program that's going to allow you to create the virtual PC. Now, after you have the hypervisor, you need to have the guest operating system that you're going to install in your virtual PC. The beauty of having virtual PC, it is because virtual PC allow you to install many operating systems in a single PC. The fact that we call it virtualization, virtual PC, virtual server, that does not mean those virtual PC or virtual server you will create will not use the hardware component of your host PC. For that reason, when you are planning to create virtual PC, you have to make sure you have a host PC that have all the requirements to host those guest PC you're going to create. What that mean? You know all PCs need to have a CPU. So the virtual PC you're going to create, as any PC, will need a CPU. You know all PC need to have RAM or memory. This is the same thing for the virtual PC that you will create in your host PC. You all know in order to install your application software, to install the operating system, to save your file, you need hard disk drive. So the virtual PC you're going to create will need a virtual hard drive. At this point, the main PC that's going to host all these virtual PCs that you're going to create, that main PC must have enough memory to share with all the virtual PC that you plan to create. That main PC that you're going to use as the host PC must have enough RAM so the virtual PC you're going to create will have enough RAM to use. This is the same thing for the hard disk drive or the solid state drive. The main PC that you're going to use as the host for all of those guest virtual PC you plan to create, you need to have drive space to install the operating system, to install the application software you're going to use in them. Because you create virtual PC, because you need additional PC to run a lot of program probably the Windows operating system that you have in the host PC is too advanced for those application software. Let me give you an example. You have an old software that you use for your business. A lot of business, they have customized software. But when you buy or you design a software, you design it to work for a specific operating system. But when that operating system that you are using for your business become obsolete, you need to upgrade to the newest operating system. Such as all business used to use Windows XP Pro. Then Windows XP Pro become obsolete. All business use Windows 7. Then after Windows 7, now we have Windows 10 and Windows 7 become obsolete. However, there are a lot of applications that you used before for your business. Those applications will not be able to work on Windows 10. At this point, you might need that older operating system in your computer to run those application software. Sometimes you may be a developer or you are testing program. You need to test your program on all operating systems. Like when you design a website, you go to many different browsers to test your website to see how your website is going to perform on every browser. This is the same thing. Sometimes you design an application software, you need to have many different computers, especially if you want your application to work on every operating system. You have to test them on every operating system to make sure that your new application software will be able to work on any operating system. So there are a lot of reasons that a virtual PC will become very handy, and I can have Linux installed in my computer. I can have Windows XP installed in my computer. I can have Windows 7 installed in my computer. I can have Windows 10 installed in my computer. So what I will do, I will create a virtual PC and install each operating system in a different PC. This is a huge advantage for business because you can consolidate hardware. Instead of having a lot of computers, you have one computer and you install many different operating systems in that single computer. The difference between multi-boot and virtualization, if you have many Windows installed in a single computer, you will not be able to use all those Windows at the same time. It's whether you use one or the other one. But with virtualization, that technology allows you to run all operating systems together in the same machine. This is totally different from multi-boot because multi-boot allows you to install many operating systems, but when you boot the computer, you have to select the operating system that you want to use. But with virtualization, you can use all the operating systems at the same time. Now, in order for a host computer to host all those virtual PCs, you need to have hardware that can support all of the virtual PCs. To install Windows 10 64-bit in a computer, you need to have at least 2 GB memory. You need to have at least 20 gig of disk space available in the hard drive. So at this point, if you have a computer that have only 2 gig memory on it, you will not be able to create a virtual PC to install a Windows 64-bit. For every virtual PC you're going to create, I would advise that you have at least 2 GB RAM for that virtual PC you're going to create. So that means if you want to create 2 virtual PC, you look to have at least 8 GB RAM, so you can allocate 2 GB to each of those virtual PC and still have 4 GB to run your host PC. So the amount of virtual PC you can create in a computer will depend of the capacity of that host PC. The other thing you need to know, you need to have a CPU that support virtualization. Not every CPU support virtualization. Now, I'm going to show you step by step how to use Microsoft Hypervisor to create virtual PC. Now, in the very bottom of the screen, I'm going to type Hypervisor. And when I type Hypervisor, and right here on the screen, you see when turn Windows feature on or off. For every operating system, you will find that link, turn Windows feature on or off, or whatever. When you click on it, for most of the Windows operating system, you will not find that feature called Hyper-V. You will find Hyper-V in Microsoft Windows 7 Pro, Windows 8 Pro, Windows 10 Pro. Microsoft has many versions of Windows, but they have much more edition than version. For every version of Windows, you can find from 4 to 8 edition. But the edition of Windows that have Hyper-V are Windows Pro, Windows Enterprise, and Windows Education. Those are the 3 Windows that come with that feature called Hyper-V. Now, from the list of features that are not automatically activated in Windows operating system, I'm going to look for Hyper-V. Now I see Hyper-V here. I click on Hyper-V to activate Hyper-V. Now I will go down, look for other application that has to do with virtualization. I will find Virtual Machine Platform right here. I click on Virtual Machine Platform, and Windows Hypervisor Platform, I will click on it too. So I will turn on those 3 features that will allow me to create and to manage virtual PC. Now, since I already activate virtual PC in that computer, I will click cancel. If it was the first time I was going to turn on Hyper-V, I will have to click on OK, and automatically Windows will turn on Hyper-V and I will be able to use it. So in that case, it was only to show you how to turn on that feature, although that feature is already in Windows, but you have to go and activate it. So now I'm going to go to the same search to look for my Hyper-V, and when I see Hyper-V Manager, I click on it. Just type Hyper and Windows will pop up the Hyper-V. Now, Hyper-V is open in the computer. I'm going to fix the camera so I can show you exactly what I want. Now, in the right hand side of the screen, look for New. And when I click on New, it gives me three options. The option I need is virtual machine. I want to create a new virtual machine, so I click on virtual machine. Now, tell me about the process. I click next. The first thing I'm going to do is to give a name to my virtual PC. Let me call it training. You can give any name you want to your virtual PC. Now I click next. This is a very important part of the process. Now the Hyper-V asks me if I want to create a generation 1 or a generation 2. What is the difference between those two generations? If you choose generation 1, you will be able to install Windows 32-bit or Windows 64-bit. But if you choose generation 2, you will be able to install only Windows 64-bit in your new machine. So since I plan to install Windows Vista 32-bit, I'm going to select generation 1. So I select generation 1 and I click next. Now the hypervisor asks me how much memory you're going to allocate for that new machine you're going to build. Don't forget, the amount of memory I'm going to allocate for my new virtual PC will be subtracted from my host PC. That means if I have 6 gig and I choose to allocate 2 gig for my virtual PC, I will have only 4 gig left for my host PC. So I select 1 gig because I'm going to install a 32-bit operating system in that PC, and I click next. So now the hypervisor said, do you want to connect your Hyper-V to the network or not? Let's say no for now. Now, the computer said, now you're going to create a PC named training, and you assign 2 gig memory. How much memory now you want to ask? So now the hypervisor asks me how much drive space I want to assign for my new PC. Now, the hypervisor said the maximum you can assign to a virtual PC is 64 terabytes. That's a lot. So, since I'm going to create a virtual PC to install Windows Vista for a few old software that I have, I'm going to say, let's assign only 50 gig to my virtual PC. I said 50 gigabytes. So my virtual PC will use 50 gigabytes from the hard drive of my host PC. So I said next. Now I finish to build my virtual PC. The hypervisor asks me what operating system you want to install. So I'm going to take the operating system that I want to install and I'm going to put it in my host PC. So the guest operating system is going to install, but you have to follow the step-by-step. Installing operating system is the easiest thing to do. The only thing is you have to follow the step-by-step in the screen. This is where we stop with that presentation. After this presentation, I expect you to use your computer at home or the computer at your office to create a virtual PC. If you create many virtual PC, you can create a virtual network too. But in order to create a virtual network, you will need a virtual switch. That same Hyper-V or any hypervisor will allow you to create a virtual switch. So you know, in order to network computer, you need a switch, and the switch is the physical point where you connect all the computer on your network together. But when you create a virtual network with virtual computer, you're going to use a virtual switch, and that same hypervisor will allow you to create a virtual switch. So a few things I want to bring to your attention. When you create virtual switch, there will be three options. So the external switch allows the guest computer to communicate with the physical network. So if you select the external switch, the guest computer or the virtual machine will be able to communicate with the physical network. If you choose to create an internal switch, the internal switch is usable only by virtual machine on the host and the host itself. If you select the internal switch, your guest computer will be able to communicate only with the host. And if you create a private switch, the private switch is usable only by the VM. They cannot communicate with the host. Listen, the external switch binds with the host switch and allows virtual machine to communicate with the physical network. The internal switch creates a switch that is usable only by the virtual machine on the host and the host itself. But if you choose to create a private switch, the private switch creates a switch that is usable only by the virtual machine. They cannot even communicate with the host. So it's up to you to know what do you really want to do with your virtual machine. And there are the security aspect of it too. You have to make sure the virtual machine are protected. That means you have to put anti-malware protection in your virtual machine. The same way as any computer, your virtual machine can have virus, can have Trojan, can have any malware. So the security aspect is very important. And there are something named leak. The leak is when a virus can leak from a virtual PC to the host PC. So not only the virtual PC have to be protected, but the host PC itself can be protected. But remember, even if you have a nice network with many different servers or many different desktop, if the host PC have any problem, the whole network will be offline, because everything depends on the host PC. The host PC is like the blood and the oxygen for all of those PC. If anything happened to the host PC, they're all dead. This is where I stop with the presentation today. and I hope you enjoyed. See you for a next presentation.